company also announcing plans to invest $75 billion in CapEx this year. That's a big revision above street forecasts. This is what the CFO had to say about that spending strategy on the earnings call last night.
As we expand our AI efforts, we expect to increase our investments in capital expenditure for technical infrastructure, primarily for servers, followed by data centers and networking. We expect to invest approximately $75 billion in CapEx in 2025, with approximately $16 billion to $18 billion of that in the first quarter. The expected total investment level may fluctuate from quarter to quarter, primarily due to timing of deliveries and construction schedules.
Jim Cramer discusses the significant surge in capital expenditure across major tech companies, focusing on Alphabet's announcement of $75 billion for 2025, a major revision upward. He highlights how Alphabet, along with Microsoft and Meta, is pushing hard to expand their AI and data center infrastructure. Despite earlier hopes for cost-cutting, the reality is that demand for advanced computing power is driving these companies to spend more than expected, leaving little room for pulling back. Nvidia emerges as a key beneficiary of this spending, as its platforms remain essential for AI training and inference tasks. Cramer also touches on the challenges facing competitors like AMD, which seems to be struggling to keep pace with Nvidia. While Nvidia maintains its leadership position, doubts linger around the efficiency gains promised by innovations like DeepSeek and how they might impact future investments. He notes that despite some skepticism about the sustainability of this capex boom, companies are clearly committed to ramping up their compute capacity to meet growing demand. Finally, Cramer discusses the broader implications for the market, including the potential overreaction to capex forecasts and the role of geopolitical factors. While Nvidia's dominance remains strong, investors are closely watching companies like Amazon to see if they will follow suit with massive capex announcements. Cramer concludes that Nvidia is in a prime position, but the high stakes and rapidly changing dynamics of the AI and tech landscape mean nothing is set in stone.
That's about a 30% revision higher. Meta's was only 20% revision higher.
You're listening to the call and you're thinking, oh, okay, it's pretty good. And a lot of good stuff here. YouTube is really strong and there's a lot of profit, a lot of money being made YouTube, and you get very excited. And then they just drop a total bombshell about how much they need to buy. And David, when I'm listening to it, I'm saying to myself, well, what happened to DeepSeek? I thought we all were supposed to be cut. Did we all just get had on the DeepSeek story?
Well, Jevon didn't get had. He knew. The 1865 economist back in Great Britain.
Yes,
we were talking about a lot last week, Jevon's paradox.
Yes,
because listen, I don't think any of us expected, and I think we said this last week, when we got the commentary from many of these companies that they would suddenly reverse their capex in some way. But I think what perhaps is a bit more surprising is the increases. You mentioned Meta's, which occurred on Friday, I believe it was, 60 to 65 billion. Microsoft, at least 80, probably 85 billion. Some say will go as high as 90 billion this year. And then you just referred to that significant increase in capex from Alphabet to 75 billion. The numbers are stunning, obviously, and they all point to potentially an overreaction, I guess some would argue, in what happened to Nvidia's stock price. I would add to that, Jim, that Alphabet shares are going to be down in part because of the deceleration of the growth rate of cloud. 30%, yes, still a very strong number, but not as strong as it had been. But what do you make of the comments on the call when the CFO said the cloud miss is due to being supply constrained? More demand than available capacity. Doesn't that say good things for NVIDIA?
Yes, it does. It says great things. Now, what people are still concerned about is, if you notice in their verbiage, that they're going to be the first to sell Blackwell. Well, wait a second. I thought Blackwell was selling like mad. So that was a pause. Second, we have one more in this gauntlet. Will Amazon say that they're going to pause? Why didn't Alphabet say, you know what, we're in light of DeepSeek, we're going to maybe pause our spend? But they couldn't, because they're an honest company, and Nadesh Kanashi, who's the CFO, is not going to let them do that. I mean, Carl, we sold down NVIDIA because of a belief that you didn't need all this CapEx. So far, everyone has said they do. Amazon's the one that has the most that they're working on that's away from NVIDIA. But if Amazon says, you know what, we're going to need to do CapEx, then NVIDIA's going to go up rather dramatically.
Amazon's going to be key Thursday night. Citi today, though, does trim NVIDIA to 163.
I saw that.
They point out it's been flat since June.
Right. I mean, I read through that, and I said to the guys, I said to Jeff Marks and Ben stood. All right, here they go. Here come the downgrades. But the downgrades seemed almost out of sync. It really was much more of like, all right, this thing's not moving, so like, let's get away from it. It was not substantive. The only substantive thing I really found was that I keep thinking that Blackwell, which is the next iteration, is selling like mad. And to have the first customer learn that the first customer is finally taking it tells me that it's going to be much more forward and not now in front of us. But it's going to happen because obviously if you're spending all this money, you're going to get Blackwell. So then you say to yourself, why do you need Blackwell? Why do you need this incredibly important platform that has software? Well, you need it for both inference and you need it for training. There are people who said with DeepSeek you don't. Now, there's an outfit that I've been dealing with called You.com, and that's not Hugh Johnson, it's YOU.com. I really like You.com. And it's one of those companies that is really ahead of DeepSeek. It's way ahead. So I said, oh my God, this is going to hurt NVIDIA. And he said, well, no, actually, they're our largest investor. So, I mean, once again, you just find this. The long knives came out, whether it be China, whether it be Biden, whether it be these big hyperscalers that said, listen, we don't want NVIDIA, or we want to scale back NVIDIA. And then something happened which just said, I guess we can't. And then, AMD didn't help the case.
Yep.
Because AMD did not do well last
No,
night.
on data center in particular, those shares are looking down a bit.
Yes,
The numbers did come in
And there we
below
get a
at
full
least
downgrade out of Citi today.
what
Yeah,
the
that
street
Citi downgrade
was
was
estimating
substantive.
on data center for AMD. But I mean, just back to the bigger picture that we talk
Sure.
about often in terms of the incredible growth of data centers overall. I did think it was interesting in some of the commentary on the call from Alphabet, among the world's most efficient infrastructure as well. Google's data centers deliver nearly 4 times more computing power per unit of electricity compared to just 5 years ago, Jim. And yet the numbers just keep going like that.
No, they
Power
do.
consumption, everything else. And even with DeepSeek and the efficiencies that they may have come up with in some way, nobody's pulling back on saying, great, but we need more and more powerful chips, and we need even more electricity.
No one's saying it. I keep hoping that the glass replaces copper. That some people want to do that. I keep hoping that cryogenics from Dover replaces just the typical cooling product or water cooling product. Dover has to scale. The copper movement to glass is a very nascent one, actually led by a woman who's from NVIDIA. So I keep coming back to, well, NVIDIA's figured this out. But people want a price break from NVIDIA. They do. And maybe a lot of this was, okay, Jensen Huang, while you're off there in the Lunar New Year meeting the president, we need a better deal because this thing's rumored to be $35,000. It's not a chip. We keep using the term chip. It's a platform with software. That was another thing that people were missed on DeepSeek. Platform with software, they can charge more, and you can use the current plug it into the software. But
I mean, if everybody needs it, then why cut the price? There's no real competitors.
Well,
and they all seem determined to just increase their compute capacity as much as they can. I mean, again, back to sort of the commentary.
Right.
Alphabet's cloud customers consume more than 8 times the compute capacity for training and inferencing compared to just a year and a half ago. 8 times?
No, I mean, look, when I talked with Jensen about Blackwell, I mean, Blackwell is video. I know that I talk too much about robots, and I know that. But if everyone gets a robot, which is the vision of the guy who runs Doge, then we would all need a lot of NVIDIA power because NVIDIA has robots that don't walk into walls and aren't stupid. Let's go back to rewind the tape about why we liked NVIDIA so much. They were so far ahead of everybody else. Well, what happened? We found out that AMD has fallen behind. We found out the hyperscalers tended to need more than they got. We did get a DeepSeek story out of China, which said that they didn't spend a lot to be able to develop this product, which I think has now been proven to be false. That's not just a Peter Navarro narrative, an anti-China narrative. There was a sense that maybe the Chinese lied.
I don't know, Jim, on that one.
I don't
I've
know
also
either.
heard the other story, which is, well, it's actually very close in terms of what they actually spent to what is spent to train models here
Right, we
as
get
well,
that.
the differential is not that great.
Right. Okay.
So,
differential not that
yeah.
great. That's a better way to put it.
We also, Scott, have NVIDIA up today. This, to me, smells a little bit more like NVIDIA is winning and AMD is struggling at the time when there's this gold rush to, big investment spend. And their shares were already down, 33% over the past year?
Well, and the problem for NVIDIA is it's nearly in bear market territory. So maybe up a little bit today.
I meant
thanks
AMD.
to AMD's
Yeah.
weakness, but it's still down a bunch.
Right. AMD is down, I think, significantly over the past year, while Nvidia is up even today. So if that was a read through to the whole industry, you'd think, well, then they're selling off. Instead, Jeremy, it seems like they're sitting in the prime position here.
Yeah, I think the market's picking a winner, right? And they're saying that Nvidia, if 75 billion is accurate, again, because these are guidance and forecasts, and we've seen this movie before, right? Is that Mark Zuckerberg during the metaverse area couldn't talk about enough how much capex they were going to spend, and then once it started to get hit into the stock, boy, that number changed really fast. And so those numbers are just guidance numbers that, hey, what we could expect. Those numbers could get, if DeepSeek ends up being something where there's efficiencies to be made, those numbers, the capex numbers, are going to come down pretty fast. So I think from Nvidia, AMD point of view, I think they're just picking a winner and saying AMD is not gaining share against Nvidia. Nvidia is maintaining a lead, and the companies that are buying those chips are still saying they're buying.
The tech industry is seeing massive investments as companies like Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta ramp up spending on AI and data center infrastructure. Alphabet's $75 billion capex plan for 2025 highlights the growing demand for servers, networking, and computing power, with Nvidia remaining the dominant supplier despite initial hopes for cost-cutting measures like DeepSeek. Jim Cramer emphasizes Nvidia's lead over AMD and the continued reliance on advanced chips to meet growing AI demand. While the investments signal optimism, questions remain about sustainability and the potential for market or geopolitical shifts to impact the current trajectory. Are these significant investments in AI infrastructure sustainable long-term? Will Nvidia maintain its dominance, or could competitors like AMD close the gap? Let me know in the comments.